Hi, possums. Who out there now? Is it just us?
So far, but they're out there. They're just not, we're not detecting them on our system.
Ah.
So we just waiting to see them.
Okay. Hello. It's a fine sunny day here in Pennsylvania.
How you
Christy's
doing?
here. Woo! Christy Nelson.
The one and only.
Here they come. Supriya and hi, Kathy.
Okay. Hi,
and
Kathy.
Cindy. Oh, fabulous. Delian or Delian. I don't know how to say that. Trisha's there. Oh, hi, Anne-Marie. I'm going to sneak my paw over there and get my water jug from you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Lindsay and Rachel and Corey. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Maya.
Hi, Pam. Hi, Johanna. Hi, Melanie. Hi, Florence, who's melting.
Moon says good day from Nottingham.
Hi.
My favorite place. I used to love Robin Hood when I was a little kid, but I just read in Rose's PhD dissertation that there were no woods wider than 4 miles wide in all of England by like 1100 BC. That's a downer on our welcome note. AD. Oh, yeah. BC would have been something. Hello from New Orleans. Hi,
Ingerland.
Anne and Lynn and Nadine. And Monica, hello.
Okay,
everybody's
here.
Okay.
I'm gonna get out of here.
All right, so I need to center myself in the frame. Whoa, done. I feel so good about myself now, especially with the person growing out of my head. So today's topic on the Gathering Room is failure is not failure. I was thinking how to console anybody who's had some kind of failure in their lives, because I just realized that I've had so many more failures than I've had successes. And you know, I was looking at this Instagram posting, and it actually was a cartoon of an Instagram posting. And on one side, you may have seen it, it shows this completely chaotic living space. So it's this poor woman in this horrifically cluttered apartment with like her cats are everywhere, and there's food on the floor, and the children are screaming. And then right in the middle, there's one spot that is like pristine and beautiful. And that's her Instagram spot. That's what goes out on social media, and everything else is just madness. Well, that's pretty much how I think most of us live these days. We look at social media and we see everyone else's successes. And it could be that they've successfully found love, or that they've successfully raised a family, or that they've succeeded in their profession. They may have succeeded in your profession, and it may drive you crazy that they're succeeding the way you want to and you haven't. So everything is set up nowadays more than ever to sort of push into our faces instances of other people's successes. And social scientists know that when you actually are comparing yourself to another person, as opposed to just evaluating something, you become much more like brutal to yourself about failing to achieve what the other person achieved. You also tend to hate the other person. And there's a lot more conflict between people and within people when we're comparing with other people. In Asia, they say that comparing mind is crazy mind. When we start to compare ourselves with others, we go nuts. And it's in that context that we usually define our behaviors as failures. Or we could just start out to do something and not achieve what we wanted. I just read another study about goal orientation. And it said that when we set out to achieve a goal, we actually set ourselves up for failure. And the better way to go about things, or at least they found in research, that when people go about things in a certain way, they're more likely to be happy, but also to achieve their goals than if they set out to either succeed or fail. Let me explain that to you for a minute, because it was such a cool study. Basically, a lot of us say, set a goal and then work toward it. I've said that to a million clients. I've probably said it to you guys a million times. And then we work toward it, and small steps are more likely to work than big steps. And eventually you get there, and then everybody's happy, right? Turns out that if you set goals that way and work toward them, you have such a strong sense of failing to do what you're meant to do, because until you get to the top of the mountain, you haven't done anything. You're goal defined, and so not achieving the goal is failure. And if you instead, he said, the researcher says, instead of nouns, use verbs and adverbs. So if your goal is to write a book, that's a noun. Book. Published a book. Book. That's your goal. And there are so many days that you're trying to achieve that goal and it doesn't work. Trust me. I've spent years and years on books that never came to be. And that meant that every day's work felt like a failure. Instead, he said, think about what you're doing and how you're doing it. That's the verb-adverb combination. So you may be familiar with Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly. Daring Greatly is a brilliant title, partly because it's a verb and an adverb. To dare is a verb, and to do it greatly is an adverb. So daring greatly, according to this researcher, Stephen Hayes, is an expression of a value. A value isn't something you can achieve, it's the way you do things. So right now, think of a goal that you want to achieve. So I want to finish my book. That's why I bring it up. I like to finish my book. But instead of thinking about finishing the book, which is a goal I'll only get to months down the road, let me think of a verb and an adverb that I would consider a basic value for me. So how about creating? I love the idea of creating. So creating, what if I put wisely? It feels like hubris, but creating wisely is something that I really, really admire. So if you think about someone that you don't know personally, but someone whose sort of general life and work you admire, often you'll be able to get the verb and the adverb by looking at them. The poet Mary Oliver was a big inspiration for me this way. And she created wisely, but now that I think about it, she created from a place of a deep resonance with nature and emotion. She created passionately. So I just changed my own verb adverb setup. So if a value of mine is to create passionately, then if I sit down and I do a day's writing and I'm creating passionately, I'm going to have more of a sense of fulfillment than if I try to achieve a goal. Now, the cool part about this study was they found that when people do that, and they actually used a writing exercise to get people to this place of defining their own values. So those of you who are in Write Into Light, yay, writing exercises, they change your brain, they're awesome. So write down a little bit about a person you admire, and then find a verb and an adverb to describe how they live their life or how they do things. And then the students in this study who did that writing exercise and then applied it to their schoolwork got better grades. The control group didn't get better grades. And then there was a group that was advised on goal achievement and success, and they also did not get better grades. But the students who did a writing exercise to identify a hero and define a value, that is a verb and an adverb, just by thinking about that they put themselves in a frame of mind that allowed them to enjoy the process more. And then the outcome was that their grade point average jumped. Average, I'll have to have the G. It jumped. They did better. They did better by not being goal oriented. So that got me thinking about goal orientation in general, and how achieving goals, I've seen so many clients do it, and I've done things myself. Achieving goals, it's difficult. You don't get there very often. And when you do, it doesn't have the result that you thought. There's no there. So dear friend of mine wanted to be #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. No, this was not Liz Gilbert, but she did it. She was a #1 on the New York Times bestseller list for many, many weeks. And she told me, it made me feel really good for about 10 minutes. And then she said, other than that, it was like, well, here I sit. I'm still kind of hanging out by myself, wondering if anyone loves me. So the whole thing about goals and achievement, I think, is a whole paradigm. And I started to consider it in terms of what I believe are our entire presence in this way of being, what it really means. And as you know, I believe that fundamentally we are spiritual beings here to have a human experience. And according to Eben Alexander, the neuroscientist who had a very extensive experience after his brain died, and then he built it back, but he wrote a book called Proof of Heaven. And what he said was, when his brain was absolutely non-functioning, he was highly aware, and he went into a space of being where he felt that he was more at home. He felt that he understood the true nature of his being. And he came back with so much knowledge that he said he couldn't unpack it if he had 1,000 lifetimes. But he knew 3 things. The first one is that we're all infinitely loved. The second thing is that we are all safe. And the third thing is that we cannot get anything wrong, because we are here simply to have experiences as frail, small creatures that almost always have trouble getting things to happen the way we want them to. We struggle against entropy all the time. We want to organize something that's lasting and beautiful out of chaos that is always passing away. And so we always fail to do the things we think are our goals. But what we don't fail to do is to have the experience of whatever it is we did. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm going to achieve that goal and then I'll feel good, or even thinking I'm going to apply a value and then I'll feel good and I'll be better able to achieve my goals, instead of doing any of that, here's what I would like you to do. Think of a failure that you had in your life. Got one, something you did that failed. I'll think about my very first published book that came out and sank like a stone after years and years and years of hoping and praying and working and wanting, just down. So think about that experience, whatever yours is, and ask yourself, was I there? Did I experience it? Did I have that experience? Or was I pushing myself away from it? Was I denying it? Was I pretending something else was happening? Was I trying to cover it with false optimism? Was I trying to disown it, differentiate myself? Was I trying to pretend it never happened, hide it from the public, whatever? If you were pushing away from the experience, then you didn't get the gift. And the only reason to have the experience is to get the gift of the experience itself. Did you have the experience? And the beautiful thing is, even if you pushed away from it, you can go back and enter that and allow yourself to have the experience. But you can do that from within the framework of compassion. And I truly believe that at the end of the day, it's being able to hold all our experiences in that field of compassion that is success. That's it. And it's never too late. And people who have near-death experiences say you get to do it as soon as you're dead. You get to be a field of intense compassion that is universal and divine, and you get to review everything that happened to you. And you get to explore, and they say time is of no consequence there. So you have all the time there is in eternity to feel everything that happened through that experience. And as I've been pondering on this, and I've gone through experiences of supposed failure, what I see is that if I really let myself have the pain of that experience, and it was always painful, and it should be. I mean, we're here to try to do things that don't work, and it hurts, and that's okay. But the evolution of my own soul toward compassion was so much more facilitated by failure than it ever has been by success. The failures that I've had are of far more import to my soul than anything I've succeeded at doing. So people talk about legacy. I've never really known why people are so obsessed with legacy. When you're dead, you're dead. But if I have a legacy, and the legacy is I did this amazing thing, and I won this prize, and I got on that list, and people admired me. Okay, that's my legacy for other humans who will also die. And ultimately, it's all going to pass away. But what is the mark left on my soul by the experience of living? And I don't think it's the winning combinations that are going to be the treasure I take from this. I think it's the depth of compassion and understanding and empathy and love that comes from softening into what we call failure. So I hope the little values experiment was fun for you, but I hope even more than that, that you start to see your failures as experiences your soul set up so that it could taste the full range of human experience, and that the only way you can possibly not succeed is to not be present. And that if you're ever not present with something, you can always go back and be present anyway, retroactively. Therefore, you cannot fail. This is what I have to say to you today. So now I'm going to invite the gracious Badger back, Bruno and Megan, and ask her to please read us some of the questions.
Hi, we already have some great questions. I wanted to go straight down to Judith. What's the difference between failure and disappointment? Is there any?
There's a huge difference between failure and disappointment. Failure is very measurable, I would say. It's measurable in the outside world. Did something happen the way you wanted it to happen? If it didn't, then you would call it a failure. Disappointment is our emotional reaction to the attachment to the goal. So there's nothing wrong with goals, and there's nothing wrong with wanting them. But in Asia, they would say, so desire, there's nothing wrong with desire, but there's attachment to desire, and attachment to desire causes inevitable suffering. Because if you want something and it doesn't happen and you let it go, you're fine. But if you want something and it doesn't happen and you go into tremendous levels of grief and disappointment, it hurts. So one of my favorite stories is from this a yogi. He had a crystal collection of these gorgeous crystals on this glass shelf, and they're all one of a kind, right? And one day the maid was cleaning the shelf and she knocked it over and all the crystals smashed. And the yogi came back in and she was like, the cleaning woman was desperate and devastated. And she was like, please don't hurt me. And he was like, he said, why should I be upset? Those things were for my joy, not for my misery. So because of his training in non-attachment, he was able to see these beautiful things that were for his joy. And when they no longer existed, he knew that everything is impermanent. And so he went, okay, I'm not going to let them be for my misery. That's a place people can get with a lot of practice and a lot of like spiritual contemplation. But I really even think one of the wisest people I know told me that even after you reach levels of high enlightenment, it's almost as if life gives you more intense experiences so that you can't help but attach. Because the experience of the broken heart, you know, it's what Leonard Cohen says, there's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. The experience of heartbreak is what opens us to illumination here in these physical bodies. And unless we lose something we're attached to, our hearts don't break. So if you're not attached, then be very pleased with yourself. You have succeeded at non-attachment. And if you are attached and you're disappointed, be very pleased with yourself because you're experiencing the heartbreak that lets in the light.
Great answer.
Can't fail.
Anne-Marie asks, what if your biggest failure is failing to try?
Okay, why is that failure? It may be because you're disappointed in yourself that you didn't try. The only problem there is your attachment to the thought that you should have tried. If Byron Katie were around, she would say, are you sure you should have tried? Can you absolutely know that that's what you're here for? Maybe what you could do is suffer the disappointment of not trying and go into it and allow it to break your heart and to feel like you've wasted your life. If you go into the experience and don't hold it at bay, what happens is that you go through it and come out the other side. We've talked in the past about getting unstuck. And one of the best ways to get unstuck is to go into the suffering that you have from not having tried. and really experience it. So Anais Nin has that famous quote, "The day finally came when the courage that it took to stay tight in a bud became greater than the courage it took to blossom." So if you have been staying tight in a bud and you let yourself experience the full pain of that, it's actually less painful to open up. And by experiencing the full human consequence of your own sorrow and disappointment, you open yourself to new ways of being, and you free yourself from cages in the mind. It's all just about being present. If you're there, you can't fail.
Great follow-up from Alexi. Can you share an example of going back and experiencing a thing you weren't present for? Thinking about many times, I wish I'd been more present and less anxious.
Yeah, like raising children, okay? Like the whole damn show. I wish a million times, I was young, I was tense, I was trying to get my PhD and then get my career going. And I wasn't really present in the way that I wanted, that I now wish I had been for my children. I see other people who are so much more engaged and present. And I don't think my kids, my kids are amazing, but I often feel like I failed as a mother. So what can I do? I can go back and be present with that anxious, distracted 28, 32, 41-year-old. And I can say, oh my God, now that I go into it, I realize that I was gone when I wanted to be there. I was distracted when I wanted to be focused. And it hurts, man. It hurts. And I can let it hurt. And I can say, how is this changing me? And as I've done that, what it's done is it makes me less the harried, distracted, career-focused person. And it makes me more present with my children as they are today, and with them as they used to be, and with everyone, because we're all children struggling along in grown-up bodies, trying to be okay. And it just it kind of softens you up to go back and experience where you failed.
Nadine says, how can we let the attachment to the outcome go?
You can't. One good way is to use the Byron Katie work, but what she says is you have a thought, I need to succeed, for example. And then you ask, can I absolutely know that that's true? You ask 4 questions, one of which is that true? Another of which is, can I absolutely know that that's true? And she encourages you to sit for hours with that second question and really go deep, deep inside. Can I absolutely know that it's true that I need to succeed in order to be happy, for example? And you see people at Byron Katie's school asking themselves that question, can I absolutely know this? And going inward, and often people close their eyes and you can see their consciousness dropping down. And then their eyes open and they're so much calmer. And they say, no, I can't absolutely be sure. And in that moment, the attachment breaks. But at the same time, Byron Katie herself always says, I will never ask you to drop a thought. You will work on the thought, you will question the thought, and then the mind will decide when to drop it. You actually don't have that agency. Your mind will make up. As one of my clients used to say, my mind has a mind of its own. And it drops attachment when it wants to, but you can question your attachments to make the dropping happen faster. Yeah.
Cool.
Great question.
Yeah. Donna asks, how do you not get consumed by the fear that keeps you from experiencing anything, failure or success?
The fear itself is part of what we're defining as failure. There are 2, I've mentioned recently 2 books. People last week were saying, hey, another book report. But I have been reading books by some amazing wise people from different cultures. And it's interesting to me. I was just saying to Ro, I'm fascinated by the issue of enlightenment. And it's fascinating to me how many people who have sought enlightenment also had panic disorder. And I was almost thinking maybe panic disorder and panic attacks, that all-encompassing, the horrific fear that blots out everything else. Maybe that is in fact the binary opposite of enlightenment, total fear. And it's very interesting to me that many people who go into a space of no suffering start at a place of panic disorder. And one and all of them say that they didn't just find a way to crawl out of fear, they turned and looked at the fear and refused to leave it and said, I will watch you. I will watch you. I will understand you. I will not be afraid of being afraid. Because there's always a level, or maybe if you're afraid of being afraid, you don't have to be afraid of that. There's always a level at which you can stop, turn, and observe. And when you stop and observe, it can be very, very, very confronting and difficult. But the mind begins to drop its attachment to fear and come into a place of peace. The place of observation is a place of peace. So that methodology I keep talking about every single week, because it's kind of actually the golden key to happiness, to stop and observe your fear compassionately, is to begin the end of fear. And there's a lot of brilliant people who have said so. So don't take it from me. Take it from others.
I think this has the same answer, but Sarah asks, how do you not get consumed by the fear of loss of loved ones?
You accept the fear of loved ones. You can't get rid of it. We live in a mode of being where death is the end of all of us, and you can't help loving. And loss is painful, period. You will always, when you lose things you love, go through a grieving process. And the knowledge that you can get through that process is how you stay present. And Jack Kornfield, the meditation teacher, said he once was he was going through Las Vegas, and he saw at a casino, they had a drawing, and there was a big sign on it that said, you must be present to win. So if they drew a number and the person wasn't there, that person couldn't win. And he said that's sort of the motto of our lives. If we're going, the whole premise of true success is just presence. And when you're present in knowing that people you love will die, and that you may get sick and die, that it will be hard, that grief has these stages that are often unbearable, and that you can stay present with that, and that it will crack you open, destroy bits of ego, until maybe the whole ego is gone and you're left as the light itself. If you know that process and you're willing to be present, you'll succeed in every moment of your life, every single moment. It's different from what they tell us. It's just different.
We are coming to Donna was wondering which books you were about to reference.
Oh, they're things I've already told you about. Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche has written several books about happiness and meditation. I'm reading a book called Altered Traits, which is co-authored by Daniel Goleman, who wrote Emotional Intelligence and something else. I've referenced Stephen Hayes in this. His new book is called The Liberated Mind, I think. There's a bunch of, and Byron Katie herself. I don't know if she defines herself as having panic disorder, but she sure was miserable and depressed and very anxious before her own enlightenment. Eckhart Tolle as well. So a lot of the people I'm always referencing, my Dharma teachers, I would call them if I were into that language. And a lot of them started out from a place of intense misery and feeling like they had failed and failed and failed and failed and failed. It almost seems to me as if those of us who wanted to experience genuine success asked for failure, so that we wouldn't get caught up in the cultural definitions of success that bear no actual fruit. They aren't emotionally enriching. They don't make us connect more deeply to other people. They don't ripen the soul. But failure does. Failure is a very successful little project. And it's so easy. I do it constantly.
Yeah, right. I just want to make sure before we end that this isn't a question, it's a comment, but I think that Laurie Swanson speaks for all of us when she says your hair is totes adored.
Oh my gosh, I feel like such a failure with the hair. I'm like, right before this, I was like, I can't stand this. I need to shave my head. I am a hair failure. I've always been a hair failure. But you know, that's where I grow, and there's a crack in it where the mice get in, and yeah, thank you, sweetie. Thank you very much. So there you go. Failing out loud and in front of people is the best way to fail. So thanks, you guys. Love you. So grateful that you gathered here with us together. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Have a fabulously successful weekend, week. Because there's literally nothing else you can do.
Bye, everyone.